The big star of Pawn Stars, Chumlee, has a special skill for finding lost treasures. He has always found forgotten items that have made the gold and silver pawn shop a lot of money. He is known for having a friendly attitude and good instincts. Fans love him and think he's an important part of the team because he can see value and deal well. Chumlee's knowledge and friendly personality have led to some of the most shocking and profitable deals on the show. He deals in everything from rare collectibles to pop culture memorabilia. How is it that he can make the everyday extraordinary? Find out by watching until the end. Richard Austin Lee Russell was born in Henderson, Nevada on September 8, 1982. He goes by the stage name Chumlee. This American businessman and reality TV star is best known for his roles on Pawn Stars, a hit show on the History Channel. Chumlee has worked at the gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas for years, and the show shows what they do every day. His rise to fame as a TV star is just as interesting as the things he values. Chumlee's nickname comes from a funny story. When he was about 12, the father of one of his friends said that he looked like Chumlee, the walrus from the cartoon TV show Tennessee Tuxedo, because of his big face and chin. Austin changed his name to Chumlee, and the name stuck. He grew up in Henderson and became good friends with Corey Harrison. The gold and silver pawn shop opened in 1989 with the help of Corey's dad Rick Harrison and grandpa, Richard Harrison. And Chumlee quickly entered their world. When Chumlee was 21, she started working at the pawn shop. She did a lot of different jobs there, like testing items, loading goods, and making tickets for customers' purchases. He did these things behind the bar for 5 years, becoming an important part of how the shop ran. His hard work and unique personality finally caught the attention of the shop's owners and producers, which led to him being cast in Pawn Stars, a reality TV show that debuted in July 2009. Chumlee is often presented as the village idiot, the comedic relief, and the bottom of jokes on Pawn Stars because he is thought to be stupid and not smart. This description, however, only gives part of the story. Chumlee has shown that he knows a lot about certain things, like pinball machines, sports memorabilia, sneakers, toys, and video games. In a memorable episode from the second season called Pinball Wizards, Chumlee's understanding of pinball machines amazes even Corey Harrison. This shows how skilled he really is, and shows that he is not at all stupid. It has been an interesting and exciting ride for Chumlee, from working behind the bar to becoming a key player on Pawn Stars. He has shown over the years that his sharp eye and brave choices can help him make money. Let's talk about some of the best times Chumlee won a lot of money at the gold and silver pawn shop. For just under $4,000, Chumlee chose to buy a set of 3 samurai swords. Rick and Corey Harrison, 2 of his co-workers, were not sure. They didn't believe he knew much about this subject, and were worried that he might have paid too much for the sword without checking to see if it was real. To clear things up, they asked Mike, a swords expert in the area, to look over the collection. Mike began by looking at the first sword. It was in great shape, and didn't have any big flaws. It did have a small but acceptable nick. The sword was signed by a famous fighter, which was the most important thing about it. It became much more valuable because of this. To Rick and Corey's surprise, Mike confirmed that this was an expensive piece. Mike then moved on to the second sword. He carefully took off the handle to see if there were any marks on it, and there was another name. This sword was made in the late 1400s or early 1500s, which makes it even more historically important. The quality of the work was excellent, and the sword was in good shape, which made it even more valuable. At first, the fact that the third sword had a fake signature seemed like bad news. Mike, however, said that the sword itself was old and valuable, even though the signature was fake. It was made in the early 1400s, and is in good shape. Even though it had a mark that said it was fake, this sword was still very valuable. Mike gave the final decision after judging all 3 swords. The set was worth about $13,000 altogether. Chumlee's risk paid off, and he made a big return on his $4,000 investment. This deal showed that he could see worth and make smart choices, showing that he was not the village idiot that he was often portrayed as on the show. In another interesting event, Chumlee handled a rare and expensive katana sword that Rick Harrison had bought for $16,000. After 2 years, Rick finally got the sword back from Japan, where it had been totally fixed up by the best craftsmen. This sword was carefully fixed up using traditional Japanese lacquer and fittings from the early 1600s. This brought the sword back to its former glory. Mike, a sword expert in the area, looked at the now perfect katana, and said it was worth between $35,000 and $40,000. Rick made it clear that this sword was not for sale because it had historical value. Things took a strange turn though. When UFC boss Dana White walked into the shop, Dana was looking for a brand new sword to add to his collection. When Chumlee saw a chance that couldn't be missed, he gave Dana the katana. Even though Rick had told him not to, Chumlee knew there was a good chance for a big sale. Dana began to negotiate because she was interested in the sword's past and how it was made. After some back and forth, agreed to pay $30,000 for the sword, but his deal didn't end there. Dana was interested in more than just the sword. He saw more swords in the store, and chose to buy a bunch of them. With this extra buy, the total sale price reached an amazing $60,000. When Rick found out that his valuable sword was being sold, he was understandably angry. What happened after his talk with Dana, though, was even stranger. After spending another $9,000 on another sword, Dana had spent a total of $69,000. Chumlee's deal with Dana White showed not only how good he is at negotiating, but also how well he knows what important clients want. It turned something that could have been divisive into one of the best deals for the shop. In another interesting example of Chumlee's ability to find unique things, the BMW in which the famous rapper Tupac Shakur was shot is in question. Rick and Chumlee went to a Las Vegas car shop that said they had the exact BMW that Tupac was driving when he was shot and killed in 1996, after going to a Mike Tyson fight. Even though it had been fixed up and cleaned, the car still held historical value. It came with paperwork that proved it was real, like a lease deal from Death Row Records that said Tupac was in the car during the terrible event. Rick brought Warwick, his trusted expert on music items, with him to figure out how much the car was worth. Warwick compared it to Tupac's Hummer, which had sold for $200,000. He said the BMW could fetch between $500K and $1 million because of its historical importance, and the fact that Tupac's records from that time had sold over 10 million copies, making them diamond albums. Even though the car had a bad past, its link to Tupac added to its appeal and mystery, making it a possible prize for the right buyer. After turning down an offer of $900,000, the seller set the price at $1.5 million. Rick found it hard to swallow this high price tag. Because the car had been in a crime scene, its value was subjective and hard to predict. It depended a lot on the right buyer at the right sale. They had to back out of the deal because they couldn't justify the high price, but it wasn't a waste of time. Chumlee learned something new that made him realize how much he knew about the pawn business. He loved the chance to learn more about something so special and important to history. Having such a dramatic past teaches us a lot about market value and buyer interest in things. At the gold and silver pawn shop, Chumlee always finds interesting things. One memorable moment happened when a man walked in with an old card-playing book from 1866. The book was full of old card game rules and techniques. Even though it wasn't in the best shape, it talked about a lot of different games, some of which aren't played much anymore. That person wanted to sell the book for $1,500, but would take as little as $1,000. They won it in a card game. Chumlee became interested in the book's age and content, and started to look into what it might be worth. Long whisked, 5-card cribbage, and different kinds of poker, like straight poker, draw poker, and the less well-known whiskey poker, were all in the book. Because card games have a long history in Las Vegas, Chumlee thought the book would be a good addition to the store's library. Chumlee called in Rebecca, the shop's book expert, to get a more exact price. She agreed that the book was a great example of how-to books from the 1800s, which were popular because there were no official schools at the time. She said that before 1858, there weren't many books on card game rules, especially poker rules, so this 1866 release was very important. Rebecca thought the book was worth about $2,000 because it was important to the history of gaming and collectors would be interested in it, especially in Las Vegas, where there are a lot of professional poker players and poker fans. Chumlee was surprised by this price because he thought the book might not be worth much because of how it looked. Once Chumlee had the expert's report, he started talking with the seller about the price. He wanted to make a deal that would be good for the shop, because he knew the book had a lot of promise and collectors would be interested in it. At first, the seller refused to lower his price from $1,500, but Chumlee knew he had to buy it for less to make a good return. Chumlee was able to get the price lowered to $1,375. After some back and forth, the shop could still make a good profit at this price point, which was good for everyone. The seller was happy and left. Having made a good deal, Chumlee was happy to add a unique and historically important book to the store's stock. Because Chumlee loves collecting card games, the gold and silver pawn shop gave him a great chance. A seller came in one day with a gathering starter deck that was still sealed. The number of people who play the collectible card game Magic the Gathering and the worth of the cards have both gone up a lot over the years. This deck is very rare and expensive because it comes from the beta set, which was the second release of the game. A secret deck is interesting because it's mysterious. There could be common, uncommon, and rare cards inside, some of which could be expensive. The seller bought these decks online, but most of the time they didn't get good pulls. Rather than keep the deck, he chose to sell it for $40,000 and take the money. Because Chumlee knew the risks and possibilities, he chose to get a trading card expert to check the deck's authenticity. The expert confirmed that the deck was in great shape, and that it did look like a real beta Magic the Gathering starter deck. The deck's worth could go through the roof if someone pulls a Black Lotus, which is one of the most sought-after cards in the game. There was, however, a big risk involved. The deck could be closed again, and there was no way to know what was inside without opening it. The expert said that Chumlee should buy it, and then open it to look at the cards inside to make sure it was real. Based on how valuable the rares inside might be, he thought a safe price to buy it would be between $23,000 and $25,000. Chumlee talked with the seller, and finally made an offer of $25,000 with a twist. He said they should split the value of the black flower, if it was inside. The seller agreed to the deal because he or she was interested in seeing the cards, and could make more money. Now was the time of truth. Chumlee and the expert opened the sealed deck with great care. As they showed off the two rare cards, there was a lot of tension. There was a Power 9 card among them. These are some of the best cards in the game. It was thought that this card alone was worth $150,000, which was a lot more than what Chumlee paid for the whole set. The expert agreed that the card was in perfect condition, which made it even more valuable. This amazing pull made the whole buy worth it. It turned a risky bet into a huge win. It was a great choice for Chumlee to buy and open the deck. The seller was glad to have seen the reveal, and Chumlee was thrilled with how well things turned out. The O.J. Simpson Bronco is one of the most famous cars in American history. It was used in the famous police chase that was shown live across the country. It was possible for Rick and Chumlee to get a close look at this famous car when they went to a Las Vegas shop. In the chase, O.J. Simpson was in the back seat of this Bronco, which was driven by O.J.'s friend Al Cowlings. They went on the chase in 1994, after O.J. failed to turn himself in for killing Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. This Bronco had been carefully kept up, and still had its original license plate. It had also been driven very little, and was in perfect shape. It is impossible to stress how important this car is to history, since millions of people saw it during the chase. It is a unique piece of pop culture history. The owner of the store said he had already turned down a $50,000 offer, and was now seeking $1.3 million for the Bronco. Rick and Chumlee were in a tough spot, even though the car was in perfect condition, and had a lot of historical worth. Even though they knew the car could fetch between $500,000 and $1 million at sale, they couldn't agree with the asking price of $1.3 million. The fact that the Broncos were linked to a well-known crime made it more interesting and harder to value, which made it a big risk. Even though Rick and Chumlee failed to buy the Bronco, the experience did teach them some things. Chumlee used this chance to teach Rick about the history and importance of the vehicle. This was one of the few times Chumlee could teach Rick something new, which made him a more useful Pawn Stars team member. A bronze bust of the Virgin Mary with Vatican approval was another interesting deal that showed off Chumlee's skills. The seller wanted to pay for a kitchen remodel, so at first they asked $80,000 because they thought the bust's rarity and approval would make it worth that much. The bust was a copy of Michelangelo's Madonna that was made with permission from the Vatican. This made it an important and valuable piece. Chumlee was interested but wary, and he knew he needed to get professional confirmation. The bust was marked to show that it was number 154 out of 500, which means it was made early and may be worth more. Chad, who knows a lot about art, was called in to look at the piece. Chad said it was real and praised the quality of the work. He thought it was worth about $35,000 though, based on prices on the secondary market that were much lower than the seller's asking price. Chumlee knew the seller was upset, but he also needed to make a deal that would make him money, so he offered a trade instead of cash. He suggested trading 100 pounds of silver, which is worth about $24,000. The seller was interested in the idea of trading for something real and valuable, so they agreed to the deal, but only until the value of the silver could be proven. A smart move by Chumlee was to use a trade instead of a direct buy. Silver prices had been going up and down, and since they were going down, the shop stood to gain from the deal. By selling silver for cash, Chumlee was able to get the bust for less than what it was thought to be worth. This meant that he could make more money when he sold it again. This deal not only showed how good Chumlee was at dealing, but also how well he understood how markets work. It was smart for the shop to trade metal, which it already had, for a valuable piece of art. It showed that he could think strategically and creatively, turning problems into chances to make money. At first, Rick and Corey weren't sure about the trade, especially since the bronze Madonna bust wasn't worth as much as they thought it would be. But Chumlee's choice turned out to be good. By taking advantage of the falling price of silver, he was able to build up a balance that made the shop's assets worth more. He showed that he was smart about business by being able to take calculated chances and make decisions that could lead to big profits. Chumlee became a big star and fan favorite on Pawn Stars very quickly. People liked him because he was friendly and did funny things, which made him a common name. Taking advantage of his newfound fame, Chumlee started his own business, selling novelty items that he designed and setting up public events. His products, which included everything from t-shirts to bobbleheads, sold better than that of other cast members. He sold Rick Harrison half of his business for $155,000 in 2010 because he saw a need for Chumlee branded goods. This change made it easier for the pawn shop to handle the growing number of orders, which increased Chumlee's fame and reach even more. Chumlee became more well-known in pop culture outside of the pawn shop. In the episode of the hit TV show iCarly called I Lost My Head in Vegas, he played himself along with Rick and Corey Harrison. Getting on regular TV made him even more popular as a beloved reality TV star, which brought him even more fans. Chumlee took another big step as a business in May 2017, when he opened Chumlee's Candy on the Boulevard, a candy store right next to the gold and silver pawn shop. This business showed that he could branch out and make money off of his name, showing that he had business sense beyond the pawn shop. Chumlee also loves cars and has a great collection that includes a Rolls-Royce Phantom, a Maserati Gran Turismo, a Cadillac Escalade, a Range Rover, a 1964 Impala SS, and his best, a 1986 Buick Regal that has been modified with hydraulic lifts. Fans love another part of his personality that is very different from the others: his love for cars. Chumlee's rise from working behind the counter to becoming a reality TV star and successful businessman shows how hard he works, how charismatic he is, and how smart he is when it comes to running a business. He is a beloved figure in pop culture and an important part of the Pawn Stars team because he can connect with people, see worth and take calculated risks.